Welcome back. It is that time of year. So this is the final power rankings to be done on this board. The power rankings will be done on a board that is on its way here. I'm really excited about it. I've got my fingers crossed that it's going to be fantastic, and that it will allow me to display 32 through 1 using pucks. I have so many fantastic puck sets that have just been waiting, dying for this opportunity, and it's going to be great. Including, yes, I've got I think 3 different Seattle pucks. I have a 4th one on the way, so we're all set. I have a puck set that's all the mascots, so minus the Rangers, and Seattle hasn't got a puck mascot because they don't have their mascot yet. And yeah, so I've got a retro one, the retro reverse as well. So and then there's some others too that are Seattle related in the 32 puck display. So I'm really looking forward to that next week. But for this week, again, it's a little bit different than normal. I'm not getting into where anybody was last week, but I've got everything written down to where teams were at the end of the season. And there's always that debate at the end of the regular season about where I have teams in the power rankings, and then what happens in the playoffs is usually completely different. The playoffs are a completely different beast than the regular season, and I keep mentioning this, the All or Nothing mini-series on the Leafs shows the regular season and the postseason are completely different. Power rankings are designed with the regular season in mind. I did see some power rankings during the playoffs this year, and I thought it was kind of silly once you get to the semifinals to still be doing a power rankings. But I did see it from a couple of sites. So, number 32. Yes, 32 teams this year. So, you can see I had to handwrite 32 on the board. And it's Buffalo. Down 3 spots, it's Buffalo. So, the other thing you'll notice is I've got a bunch of new magnets, which, of course, I was spending the off-season making sure I had as many varied magnets as possible. And Buffalo, there you go. 32, you're first on the board. Number 30, dropping 7 spots from where they finished last year, Arizona. I do not have a Kachina yet in the 3D magnet variety, but that'll happen soon. Again, the pucks or the puck displays on the way, so it's not really going to matter, but I will get one in a Kachina style of this as well. These are available through the NHL site before anybody asks. But yeah, so Arizona tearing things down, Buffalo tearing things down, the whole Eichel situation. I don't think anybody's going to argue with them in the bottom 2. Number 30, dropping 3 spots from where they finished last season, the Anaheim Ducks. For the Ducks, it's been another offseason where we can tell they're not really building to a playoff spot, right? This is still a rebuild that's in progress. So the expectation for the Ducks this year is low, and so, yeah, Anaheim ends up dropping to just above Arizona, as well as Buffalo. Remember, Arizona's now in the Central, so that's not a Pacific team anymore that's dragging down their average. Number 29, dropping 1 spot from where they finished last season, Columbus. For the Blue Jackets, really, in all honesty, the losses in the offseason and just the general malaise that seems to be around this team right now, we'll see if that changes once we get into the regular season and all of that. But it feels like this is a team that likely misses the playoffs this year. So I have them at 29th on the board. There could be some big moves. Remember, during the first week of that regular season, I won't be doing a power rankings. So next Saturday night, you don't get a power rankings. Number 28, dropping 3 spots from where they finished the season, San Jose. So for the Sharks, well, again, they've got some high contracts. There are some concerns if you're the Sharks. They switched out their goaltending. Did it get better? I don't know. Kozanosh was sent down by Arizona, which was a mild surprise. Of course, Martin Jones moves on. But is San Jose better right now? I do have some doubts, some concerns, and therefore they end up at 28th on the season opening power rankings. Number 27, dropping 5 spots from where they were to end the season last year, is Detroit. Detroit, honestly, at the end of the year, they were good. Detroit, absolutely, they were playing well, and I do expect them to surprise some people this year. However, I don't expect them to be a playoff team or even necessarily push towards the playoffs. 22 at the end of the season last year was just a lot of it was hard work, grinding out some wins here and there. and just that level of effort was really high. I expect that again this year. I wouldn't be surprised if Detroit ends up being in this area more during the season than anywhere near here. I think the worst is behind them. Number 26, moving up 4 spots from where they finished last year, is LA. The Kings, that's a tough call, right? There's a lot of good young players coming into the Kings lineup, and so we'll see how things turn out for the Kings this year. I think they should move their way up the standings. I do have them ahead of the other 2 California teams, but not by a lot. And I think, with Byfield getting hurt and just some stuff in the preseason and whatnot, again, there are some concerns for me there with the Kings, so I kind of scaled back my expectation for them. Number 25 is where I'm putting Seattle to start the season. So I had to make up my mind. I had to say, all right, so they haven't played a game yet. I could logically put them at the back of the line and say they've got to earn their way up. Also, I could have been like some who look at their numbers and look at all the stats and say, you know what? This is a team that could very well finish third and get a playoff spot. And they could. But to start the season, I'm happy with putting them at 25th. I think that's fine. So yes, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 teams in the Pacific in the bottom row. I don't think Seattle's staying there. I think Seattle's going to be higher than that. And I would think that, Seattle could very well threaten for a playoff spot. The Pacific looks really wide open. Now, whether it's through division mediocrity or whatever it is, it's exciting to see a new team in the league, and it'll be fun to see what they do. Moving on to number 24, dropping 3 spots from where they finished last season, is Philly. I have my concerns with Philly in the offseason. I know they've improved the blue line. I'm still curious to know whether or not any of this is going to get them closer to the playoffs. I have some concerns with their goaltending as well. Mixed returns on Carter Hart and his health before the season started, and Martin Jones in net. So I have some real concern with Philly, and so I have them at 24th. But remember, it's the 2021-2022 season. Since it ends in an even number, Philly has to make the playoffs. That is the rule. When it ends in an even number, they make the playoffs. When it ends in an odd number, they don't. I don't know why that is. Number 23, up 8 spots from where they finished last year, Vancouver. Vancouver, to end out the year, was a miserable run. Absolutely miserable. And they played, 25 games in 30 days? It felt like it, right? It wasn't that many, but it wasn't that far off. And so it was hard for me because I had to keep dropping them in the power rankings while it was their schedule that was hurting them as much as anything else. And of course, the whole team had been ill. And so, it was a rough finish to the season. I have them at 23rd. I still have some concerns. I have concerns with the blue line. I've got some questions about how things are going to work out with each line. Again, it's that cautious optimism, but I'm going to leave them at 23 for now. And again, they could absolutely shoot up in the power rankings during this season, but we'll see. Number 22, dropping 10 spots from where they finished last year, is Nashville. And I'm telling you right now, Nashville is going to surprise people because that's what Nashville does. Probably end up making the playoffs somehow, some way. Finish 5th in the division, make the playoffs, take out the number 4 team in the Pacific and flip over there and end up having to deal with travel issues. But whatever, if you're a wild card team, you'll do that. But Nashville, I'm putting at 22nd because I look at the contracts, I look at the situations they're in, trading out Ellis, Rene retires. I don't see how they stay in the playoff hunt. They're going to absolutely prove me wrong. Number 21, moving up 5 spots from where they were last year, is New Jersey. I don't think New Jersey was 21 on the board once last year. New Jersey had a tough year, right? They had an outbreak of their own on the team. They never really got it together after that. And it was just one nightmare after another for the New Jersey Devils. They had some very solid additions in the offseason. I really like Bernier as an addition. I really like Hamilton as an addition. I think they've done a very good job. So I've got New Jersey higher up than they were to finish last season by 5 spots. And then we'll see how they do once the regular season gets going. Again, 2 weeks from tonight, we can discuss where they're at and whether they've moved up or what's happened with them, right? Number 20, dropping 1 spot from where they finished last year. The Montreal Canadiens only won 24 out of 56 games last year. They honestly, and they backed into the playoffs. They weren't playing well going into the playoffs. And then Toronto, again, when the team loses a 3-1 series lead, two things have happened. One, the team that came back from that 3-1 series lead has played lights out and played really smart, almost error-free hockey to get there. But also, the team that had the 3-1 series lead, on some level, has kind of beaten themselves. And I think both things are true of how that series turned out. And then Montreal, once they got past Toronto, then they sweep Winnipeg. They upset Vegas. I think Winnipeg overlooked Montreal. I think Vegas overlooked Montreal. And then in the final, Montreal ran into a team that did not overlook them because Tampa had been through the upset realm before and decided, no, we're going back to back. And Montreal was not able to counter them the way that they were with Vegas, the way that they did with Winnipeg. And of course, with Toronto coming back from 3-1 down. But no Carey Price, no Shea Weber, and, Hoffman's on the shelf. They've lost Dano. They lose Kotkaniemi on the offer sheet. And again, we can have the debate over Kotkaniemi during the year, and I'm sure that will be a big debate to have. But Montreal's just, they're shorthanded right now, and so I have them at 20 overall. Before the injuries and everything, I had them higher up. Because again, remember, during the offseason, I do move teams around. Number 19. Moving down 4 spots from where they finished the season is Ottawa. Yeah. Ottawa finished the season at 15th. They had such a good run in that second half. I've dialed back my expectations a little bit with them, not based on the preseason, but just there's no Brady Tkachuk. And, I think they're going to feel that. And I think that for the Ottawa Senators, this is a big year. And how the Tkachuk contract signing goes could really decide how well this rebuild finishes. If they're going to be a team that ends up not being able to sign their young stars when they're due, it's not going to be a rebuild that's overly successful. But I would think Tkachuk's going to get signed. It's going to get done. And Ottawa's going to surprise some people. Ottawa was very good second half of last year. And they did finish at 15 on the power rankings, which threw a lot of people off because a lot of people weren't watching Ottawa games. They were very good. I expect them to be not too bad this year either. That's why they're at 19. Number 18, moving up 2 spots from where they finished last year, is Chicago. So for the Blackhawks, they've added Marc-Andre Fleury. Jonathan Toews is back. The Chicago Blackhawks have definitely improved their standing overall. And if anybody's going to ask, yes, I have this style coming in the Chicago Magnet. So before anybody says, I can't see that or it's hard to see. Yeah, no, I get it. I'm replacing this one. I think I've got one coming for this too in this style. So don't you worry. I've got it all figured out. And so if anybody leaves that comment, you guys can say, hey, so you fast forwarded to the end. He explained that when he put that magnet on the board. Chicago, they've added Fleury. They've added Seth Jones. Everybody seems to agree that Seth Jones is overpaid. I'm not going to disagree that he's overpaid, but now he's got to live up to that contract, and we'll see how things go for him in Chicago. They've added a lot. Clearly, they've decided the retool/rebuild is over, and they want back in the playoffs, and we'll see how it goes. I've got them close. Number 17, rounding out the bottom half of the board, moving up 6 spots, Calgary. So Calgary finished the season on a down note too. I expect a bounce-back season from Markstrom, at least on some level. I don't think he's going to get back to where he was in Vancouver. I think in Vancouver it just worked really well. But I do think he'll have somewhat of a bounce-back. Gaudreau, I think, has to have a bounce-back. And it's a contract year for Gaudreau. I do like the Coleman addition. I think he's making a little bit too much. I think, and again, I'm looking at the term. But for Canadian teams, you kind of have to do that. You kind of have to overpay. You kind of have to promise a little more term. And that's just part of being, a general manager for a Canadian team. You're probably going to have to offer more than you probably want to. And so Calgary, I have them at 17th. And we'll see whether or not they move up or move down, right around the middle. Number 16, dropping 12 spots from where they finished last year, is Pittsburgh. So the upset loss to the Islanders was tough. It has to be tough for Pittsburgh, and it's the third year in a row that they haven't been able to really get anywhere in the playoffs. So it has to be getting frustrating. But now they don't have Crosby until the second week of the season. Malkin's out for a while. Jeff Carter's the number one center. Gensel's on the shelf right now. Like, it's a tough call to have Pittsburgh in the top row, which is where they were throughout a lot of the offseason. But now, I really am thinking, because I was getting asked today by a couple of people in real life, seeing people out in public, whether or not what I thought about Pittsburgh's season upcoming, and I said, it really looks like this could be a year where Pittsburgh finally ends up dropping out of the playoffs. So we'll see whether or not they end up proving everybody wrong. They always do, which is part of the reason why I said, they're going to make the playoffs, because of course they do. They're the Penguins. But we'll see. This year might be that year that finally they end up falling out. Number 15, moving up 3 spots from where I had them finish last year, is the New York Rangers. The Rangers, I really like the young kids. I think that they're going to develop and take that progression. I think Kakko's going to score more. I think Lafreniere's going to score more. And Fox, Keandre Miller, there's some really good blue liners there. I really like Shesterkin and Georgiev. There's not much not to like about the Rangers situation. The one question mark you have is, so Zibanejad has a contract coming up next summer. Do they keep him? Do they try to extend him? Do they maybe move him at the deadline, depending on where they are in the standings? And there are a lot of young kids in this lineup. So is that going to hurt them at points where that inexperience might slow them down a little? Or can the veterans in the lineup, like guys like Kreider, Trouba, can they help lead them into the playoffs? We'll see. But I do think the Rangers have a good chance. They had a good year last year. They were just in a really rough division. Thankfully, they're still in the probably one of the toughest divisions in the league. So it doesn't get a lot easier. Number 14, moving up 3 spots from where they finished last year, is Dallas. I have hope. I have hope that Dallas is going to be better. At least they're healthy. So for Dallas, there's the healthy part there. And if the goal scoring is there, I think the goaltending is going to hold up. I think the defense is going to hold up, because Dallas is known for really strong defense. And so I think Dallas could be a dark horse in the Central to finish relatively high, like maybe 3, maybe 2nd. We'll see. But I have Dallas right now at 14th, because, again, cautious optimism with Dallas. We'll see where they end up. Number 13. This one surprised me. They're in the same spot where they finished last year. Yep, St. Louis. They finished the season 13th. They opened this season 13th as well. So it'll be interesting to see how things turn out for St. Louis. They lose Jaden Schwartz. They lose Hoffman. There are players that are gone, but they've also brought in guys like Saad to replace them. And we'll just see how it all works out chemistry-wise. Parayko gets that long-term extension. Binnington's got his new contract. There are reasons to still see St. Louis as a playoff team. I think they likely are. And then we'll see whether or not they are capable of getting back to where they were in 2019, or if that was a one-off, which is not the worst thing in the world. At least it's a Stanley Cup, right? Number 12, dropping 5 spots from where they finished last season, Minnesota. So Minnesota, it's just more of when they finished 7th overall in the power rankings. It's just they were playing really, really well. So it's not that I look at their team right now and I say, well, they're really not very good, or they're not as good as they were last year. It's just because of how the playoffs turned out, Minnesota ends up dropping. Keep in mind, too, that during the playoffs, I was keeping the power rankings going on my own while not doing power ranking videos during the playoffs, because they get silly. Because then you're doing power rankings of like the 8 remaining and then the 4 remaining, and it gets silly, because there's still going to be upsets, right? So Minnesota, I hope this is the year that they finally go on a run. It'd be nice to see Minnesota finally go on a run and help end the misery of Minnesota fans, of Vikings, the Twins, the Timberwolves, the Wild. It's just, it's got to end somewhere, right? At some point, and not by an asteroid. I don't like that. That's not the right attitude. That doesn't work for me. Number 11, dropping 1 spot, Edmonton. I like what Edmonton did in the offseason. I think they're fine. I understand that Duncan Keith coming in and them taking the whole contract threw a lot of people off. Keith's played well during the preseason. He's had a lot of minutes, and he's played well. And I think with Barrie, with Nurse, and just with that blue line, and if Bouchard comes along, I think the Oilers' blue line is going to be better than people expect. And yet, again, I have them at 11. And honestly, McDavid and Draisaitl alone keep them in here. Even if there were moves made in the offseason, like, I don't know. And they're staying with the same goaltending, huh? That seems kind of old and a long shot. But then you have McDavid and Draisaitl who are going to win games by themselves. And that's a compliment to them, not an insult to the Oilers. So that keeps the Oilers at number 11. Not a big drop for them. Number 10, down 7 spots from where they ended the season, Toronto. Toronto should have, I'm saying should have, knocked out the Montreal Canadiens. They should have played Winnipeg. If they had, I think they probably would have beaten Winnipeg. And then Toronto would have played Vegas. Well, we saw Montreal beat Vegas. Could Toronto have beaten Vegas? Part of the really rough side of things as a hockey fan is you see this path forward and you think, if the team I cheer for, in this case Toronto, had beaten our nemesis in Montreal, we could have gone on a run. And I still think Toronto's capable of it. But it is mental. If you have not watched All or Nothing, and again, I'm going to do a review on it and talk about it because it's fascinating, you can see that for Toronto, it always feels like they're one goal away from throwing their hands in the air and yelling and screaming about how this sucks. And that's... It's one of those things, and Paul McLean even has a really good quote. I don't remember the exact quote, but it's a really good quote about all the demons that these guys have that haunt them through every single step of their lives because Toronto can't get out of the first round. Something that many teams have no problem doing and then get frustrated because they can't get out of the second round. For Toronto, it's round one is absolutely, it's in their minds and they can't get it out of there. Number 9, down 1 spot from where they finished last year, Boston. Losing Krejci hurts. And I know Coyle's look good at points and Studnicka's look good at points to maybe take over that second line center spot. But it is hard to argue that Boston's not looking like a team that's got a couple of cracks there. Now, Bergeron, Pasternak, Marchand, they're going to score. I know Ullmark's had a rough preseason. It's just a preseason. I'm not overly concerned. And Swayman, I think, is a very good goaltender. So we'll see how things work out for Boston, how long it takes until Tuukka Rask actually signs or doesn't sign or what happens. But I think that for Boston, you have to kind of scale back the expectation a little bit. I don't think they fall out of the playoffs yet, but they're right there with Toronto. And honestly, during my previews, I did say I thought Toronto would probably finish ahead of Boston. And again, power rankings do not state this is how I think everybody's going to end up in the standings. That's not it. This is how I see all the teams right now, and which team I think it may very well be likely to get off to a good start. So we get into the top row, number 8. Moving up 1 spot from where they finished last year is Washington. So for the Capitals, I know Ovechkin's banged up. They haven't said yet how long Ovechkin's going to be out. If Ovechkin's out for a prolonged period, and it's one of those things that could just be day to day. He could be fine for the opening night, or he could be out for a month, right? Like when it's one of those awkward looking injuries, it's impossible to tell. But I still think Washington's going to be all right. I know Backstrom's going to be out. I'm hoping that's not a long-term thing. If Backstrom's out long-term, Washington's in trouble. And it throws the Metro just into a complete and total chaos, where a team like the Rangers could finish as high as second, where you could see New Jersey, eat some points away at Washington, at Pittsburgh, and then end up being a pretty good team as well. So we'll see. But with Washington, I'm kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt just a little bit. Number 7, moving up 9 spots from where they finished last year. I think expectations are pretty high in Winnipeg, and I think rightfully so. You've got Hellebuck in net. I like the additions that they've made on the blue line. I like the look of this team right now. I think they're going to be tough to play against. It might take a little while for some of them to get chemistry with one another. But, yeah, I think they're going to be very good. And when you got Hellebuck in net and you've got a pretty strong forward group, and Ehlers could have a dynamite year. And, again, it depends on, if Ehlers is going to be healthy to start the season or not. But, yeah, I think Winnipeg's going to be very good. I think it'll be a very entertaining team to watch. They were very entertaining to watch last year, too. Number 6. Staying in the same spot where they finished last year, Florida. So I do see the occasional comment about, well, Florida's not very good. And when I see that, I think, well, see, that would make a lot of sense other than Florida finished ahead of Tampa in the same division. And Florida looked very good against Tampa during the regular season. And then they really pushed them in the playoffs and were one of the tougher challengers to Tampa Bay in the playoffs. The Islanders being the toughest, but Florida was right there with them. And Florida gave them fits. So I don't see any reason to think they're going to fall back. I keep seeing, though, this is the funny thing, too. I keep seeing Bobrovsky had a really bad year. I don't think he had a really bad year. I think the defense in front of him let him down at points. He had some very good runs, too. Was it where he wants to be? No. But I think the Bobrovsky had a really bad year is overblown because of his pay, right? That salary and the salary cap is going to mean that people really overblow everything that goes wrong. Barkov gets his extension today. Things look pretty good in Florida. Looking forward to watching him this year. Number 5, dropping 3 spots from where they finished last year, Carolina. I had some concerns about the roster changes. Losing Nedeljkovic. Freddie Anderson's looking for a bounce-back year. They lost Mrazek. They lost Reimer. And they pick up Ronta as well. I think they're going to be able to outscore their problems, though. And I was encouraged by the pairings that I saw. So Rod Brindamore, I think, has done a good job of finding the right pairings on the blue line for everybody. The lineup up front, the top 3 lines, it looks stacked. So I really think Carolina's going to be quite good. They do drop from where they finished last year, because last year they finished red hot, right up there for President's Trophy consideration. So it's a clawback only because other teams passed them during the playoffs. Number 4, up 1 spot from where they finished the regular season, Colorado. There's no expectation for Colorado to win a cup this year. There really isn't. And I think that helps them. Last year, everybody expected Colorado. This year, I haven't seen anybody pick Colorado. They're still amongst the favorites in Vegas, of course. If you're going to have betting odds, Colorado's going to be up near the top. But I don't think anybody has them as a favorite, which, again, it worked for Tampa a couple years ago. It can absolutely work for Colorado as well. You can kind of take that into the locker room and go, look, people have lost faith in us. They thought we'd win last year. We didn't. And now nobody thinks we will, so let's go out and do it. They've got to get past the second round, of course, but to start the regular season, the roster looks good. I know losing Francouz helps. As long as Kemper's healthy, they should be okay. And so I have Colorado in 4th. Number 3, up 11 spots from where they finished the season. Islanders. The Islanders have made, I think, some really good moves in the offseason as well. Really impressed with what's been done. So while Varlamov may not start the season, you may have Sorokin as a starter, maybe Corey Schneider's the backup. The Islanders have 4 good lines. Top 6 defensemen are excellent. To the point where Hickey's on waivers today. This is a very good, deep roster. They brought Noah Dobson along slowly. I expect him to play a little more this year. And again, 4 lines. They add Parise. I like that addition as well. They keep Palmieri. They're an old team. They're not a team that's necessarily going to be the fastest. But I think they're going to be smart, and they're going to be hard to play against. And with Barry Trotz behind the bench, it's hard to argue against them being near the top. Okay, number 2, dropping 1 spot from where they finished the season, is Vegas. So I talked about Toronto beating themselves in the first round against Montreal. There was some of that with Vegas as well. Vegas, their mental issue is different than that of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So for the Toronto Maple Leafs, it's just winning, right? When they're on the verge of that 4th win to get through a round, they seize up. They can't get there. In Vegas, it seems to be scoring. They have very good scorers. Everything's great. But if they get into a third period and they're down 2-0, they start squeezing their sticks a little harder. They start shooting from all over the ice, and just that confidence seems to drop that they can beat that goaltender. And it can roll over from one game to the next. And of course, you have Carey Price in the net for Montreal. That can get in the head of the Vegas Golden Knights. There, of course, was the gaffe by Marc-Andre Fleury in that series as well. And everything fell apart for Vegas in a series that they should have won. It should have been Vegas and the Tampa Bay Lightning in the final. That may be a final this year. I've seen that. I think the Hockey News is picking that as the final this year. We'll see. But Vegas is going to be a contender. I've seen some saying they think that they're going to drop a bit because Leonard's going to be the starting goaltender. I would be in line with that, other than Leonard's winning percentage was actually better than Fleury's last year, as far as I can remember anyways. But Leonard's winning percentage has been excellent since he got to Vegas. Even while his numbers may not be as good, they score more in front of him. So yeah, Vegas, I have them at number 2, which means at number 1, moving up 10 spots from where they finished the season, Tampa. And I remember too that last power rankings of the season and talking about how Tampa had kind of been in that mushy middle to finish out the season, and the effort wasn't necessarily where you wanted it to be, and you could see this was a team that was waiting for the playoffs. You could see it, that their plan was, all right, so we're taking our time, we don't really care about home ice. The problem was, because they were losing as many as they were down the stretch, I end up dropping them down to 11th, because that's how the power rankings work. Teams are winning, they move up. Teams are losing, they move down. How they're winning, how they're losing may decide where they end up on the board. But Tampa starts the season at number 1. 2 Stanley Cups in a row, and they're looking for a third. So there you go. That's the starting point for the 2021-2022 season. And, yeah, we'll see how things go from here. So, again, don't take these entirely seriously, because I don't. I just have fun with it. It's a fun thing to do once a week. And again, the first power rankings of the regular season will be 2 weeks from tonight. By then, we should see most teams will have played 4 or 5 games, and we'll kind of have an idea for how they're doing. And, yeah, so there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video, and we're back. Regular season 2021-2022 gets underway in a couple of days, and I'm excited about it. So, yeah, play ball. Or, yeah, sure, play ball. Why not? Thank you guys so much for all your support. And if you haven't hit like and subscribe, go ahead. I'll talk to you again soon.